From FingerLicks1.com and presented by FL1 Radio, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. Our program begins last week when Democrats held their primary to determine the challenger to incumbent Congressman Tom Reed. The Republican, who serves the 23rd District, seeks another term this fall and is our guest this hour. We're going to spend some time breaking down the race, some of the big issues that have been presented over the last several months, and much more. Congressman, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Josh. Really do appreciate it.
So, all right, the first question I got to ask, how do you stay motivated? A lot of negative news out there. It's a grind. It's a year-round grind, not just during election years. How do you stay motivated and keep pushing forward?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm just the eternal optimist, being raised by a single mother whose father passed when I was 2. And she always taught me, you could either have a very negative outlook on life, or you could have a positive outlook on life and enjoy the ride and do the best you can to do what you came here to do. And we came here to help people. And one of the things that keeps us motivated is getting out there, talking to people, doing the town halls, listening to people. Just left a small manufacturer before we had this interview today. And you see on their face when things are going well, when you see things like tax reform benefiting them, you see the work that you do day in and day out in Washington coming to a head and having an actual positive impact back here. That to me is so rewarding. And then it's just not even those big policies. You know, I try to do on a regular basis calls to constituents where we've helped them out with some of the bureaucracy of the federal government, be it the IRS, immigration in regards to passports, things like that. And to be able to call them and say, hear their voice where they're like, we appreciate what you did. We appreciate you stepping forward and breaking some of that paperwork, red tape, to get an answer for them. To me, that's very rewarding. And those two things together, I think, is the most important thing we do in regards to staying motivated, continue to go forward. And at the end of the day, too, as you deal with each election cycle, Josh, there's always the question, is the job done? And to me, the job is not done yet. We have some more work to do, and we're going to continue to do it so long as the people stand with us and want us to do it. We'll listen to their voice and continue to push forward.
Great segue, because that was the next question. What are some of the motivating issues that are making you stay hungry and say we really need to keep pushing forward? The job isn't quite done.
Well, first and foremost, as we see this economic recovery, this growth across the country, the numbers I'm seeing in job creation. I mean, we have 6.7 million jobs out there with 6.3 million people looking for a job. There's huge opportunity out there for people to tap in to that labor market. But we're really here in Western New York now. We face some New York State policy issues coming out of Albany that are obstacles to our growth. But we're starting to see that economic recovery right here in our backyard. And we want to see that through. We want to see that manufacturing, especially the advanced manufacturing, brought back to our area. We have a rich legacy of manufacturing. We can do it again here in our backyard. Want to continue to see the tourism and our microbreweries and our distilleries and our wineries and the development of the lakes in a positive way. Continue to go forward, because that to me is how we're going to see that economic recovery right here in our backyard, which means it's not about economy. It's about people having a job, having an opportunity, that dignity that comes from being able to take care of yourself and your family that I know people want to have the ability to do. And so that to me is number one, is making sure people are in a position to achieve success on their own merits. And that's what we work for day in and day out. And then when you got things with the national debt, I've always been chasing what they call the grand bargain. That is the bargain that gets our national debt under control and gets people back to work. You couple those things together, to me, that's when the job will be finished. And that's the next big obstacle that we have to overcome, getting this national debt under control. Is
the ripe for opportunity right now, right? Republicans have control of all of the necessary pieces to make the progress that they want to make. Has it come along as quickly as you hoped after President Donald Trump was elected?
It's that's one of the lessons of D.C. People ask me often, what have you seen, what have you learned that shocks you? And it is amazing how slow Washington, D.C. Operates. There's gridlock on top of just the institution that doesn't want to change. Status quo tends to be the position that it wants to be part of. I think I'm part of that disruptive voice. I think I come in of this wave of 2010 that are carrying the attitude of we have to change course. We have to get new policies instituted that get the country going down a much better path than what it was on before. And we're starting to see those positive developments. But even with the Trump administration, there's been some huge advancements, tax reform getting signed into law, economic numbers like we haven't seen coming across the desk when it comes to employment and opportunity out there to people. You're seeing things on the foreign affairs stage like North Korea that are being disruptive in regards to getting an outcome that I think we all want to see achieved, a denuclearized Korean Peninsula. That is critical to the safety of the world and safety to us right here in America. So, we're starting to see it, and we see it. And obviously, I would love to have it happen much faster, but nature of the beast, we're just going to push day in and day out and keep the fight up and move it as quick as we possibly can. So,
obviously, one of the big issues locally, the $365 million proposed incinerator for Romulus. Your thoughts on the proposal, and also I want to ask about the unity that seems to exist across party lines on this particular issue. It seems, frankly, unheard of.
Yeah, no, this is great in regards to unity, and I've been opposed to the incinerator, and will continue to be opposed to the incinerator, and see this through to the end. At the end of the day, I think there's enough. Will that come up in the thing?
No, you'll be good.
Okay, we'll be good. I hear a train coming through the operation here. Remain opposed to the incinerator, and this is pretty much a state issue entirely. And so, the powers to be, and that's one of the reasons why I do believe in local control and local ability to determine these outcomes, and at least this is being done at the state level rather than a federal mandate that would force this down our backyard. And so at the end of the day, I think the position that will win is that unified position that's coming across loud and clear, in my opinion, to the state government, not here in Romulus. And I think that is the right call, and that's what the outcome will be.
Now, I want to just jump back into the gridlock. You hinted at it a little bit, the status quo. What do you say to the folks who look at your 2 terms and say, well, he hasn't quite gotten the job done because look at Washington? Do you go back to the point that, one person can't change the entire world in one fell swoop? It takes a bit of a process. Or do you focus on the things that have been accomplished and then rather let momentum sort of carry itself?
Yeah, no, I look at what we put our record up and let people make the informed decision. That's all I ask, is that people have the information, and then it's up to them to decide which is the right course. And I think our record's very clear. We are part of standing for them, the people of the 23rd Congressional District in Washington. Standing for things like tax reform, standing for things like cutting regulation that's more based on reasonable cost-benefit type of approach to it. You're seeing those policies taking hold as we speak. Those are movements in the right direction since 2010 that we were going completely in a counter direction on. And we're starting to see the numbers when people talk about jobs right in our backyard. We're seeing growth start to take hold here, even in a very complicated and complex and anti-business climate of New York State. We're seeing some positive results there. And then we also look at the cases, the 10,000 plus cases that our team's been able to help with through the bureaucracy. Over the years, we've become very, I think, to credit to our team, well-versed in helping people out with that bureaucracy. We have relationships now where we cut through the red tape much faster than other entities and other offices may be able to do because of those relationships. That is positive work where we tell folks, we're part of that change agent of Washington. And I come back every weekend. I leave D.C. I'm not one of these guys who stays in D.C. I love being here at home. Not only does my family live here, but it's just the place I feel comfortable. And I love traveling the district. We have 11 counties, 5.5 hours essentially tip to tip if I went from one corner of the district to the other corner of the district. And as I travel through it and I stop at little places like I did today at the local hardware store up at Phelps and talk to the person behind the counter because I had about a 10-minute window to spend a little local dollars to get something there at the counter. And I'll tell you, I love that. they're part of my family. They're part of my friend network, and I love getting stopped at. When people talk to me at Wegmans, when I go down there for a gallon of milk. It's supposed to be a 5-minute run. My wife will be like, "You've been gone 2.5 hours. What happened?" That's what motivates me, and that's where we're still part of that change. And one of the things I'm also proud of, Josh, is the work we're doing across the aisle. That Problem Solvers Caucus that we initiated here a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where I chair it on the Republican side, the 24 Republicans, Democrats, 24 Democrats on their side. We are really the only beacon of hope in regards to people coming together, getting to know each other, and trusting each other. And we came to a position where we stood together on healthcare, immigration, gun violence, prison reform, which is going to the president's desk. These are huge, maybe not grand slams that people are going to write headlines about day in and day out, but we're moving the needle, and I will tell you, the word is out that we're leading that charge on the Republican side.
Do you think that group grows after this election cycle?
I absolutely do. And the reason why is because you're seeing extremism take over Washington, D.C., and both on the left and the right. Extremism seems to be part of the status quo of our government principle, and that is not good for anyone. So we've stood up to our hard right. We're going to stand up to the hard left that seems to be taking over the Democratic Party and say, you know what? You can fight all day long. You can stay in your camps on the hard left and hard right. But at the end of the day, the people that suffer are the American people who are working day in and day out, who are not participating in that extremism, and they get lost in the shuffle. And that's the voice I try to listen to as much as possible. That silent voice that's out there where people are punching the clock, working hard, and then the extremists on the agendas take over and bring the city into gridlock.
How damaging historically has that been? Put that in perspective as somebody who's been living through it now for 8 going on 9 years. What that has done to not just the political process, but the sort of the morale of just people.
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh, because I speak of it often. If this extremism takes even further hold and we become more polarized as a country, one of the things that's concerning to me is I'm seeing more and more people just kind of throwing their hands up in the air and saying, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to participate. I got other things to worry about. And they rightfully do. They got their kids they're worried about. They're worried about their kids going to get a college education where they're coming out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. They're just struggling day in and day out. But if you disengage, that is the death of democracy. If the American people and our citizens say, you know what, we're not going to participate, then you just hand it over to the extremists that are participating, that are engaging. And at the end of the day, if that occurs, that is what democracies tend to face at the end of their reign if people do not stay engaged. So extremism is a new area that I am really concerned about, on top of the national debt, that really I'm starting to become very, very troubled by.
So the breakdown for us, the extreme Ithaca liberal moniker that has sort of emerged out of the most recent primary contest here in the 23rd. Obviously, some people feel it's a little gimmicky, a little bit of a, but I think what you're intending is that it embodies something. So walk us through what that is.
Yeah, it's a brand to describe the extreme ideology that's represented by that. It's not about people. It's not about a place. It's about an ideology that I think we have tapped into with that extreme Ithaca liberal brand that people respond to. People get it. People, as I go around and talk to people, they get what that is. They've been there. They've heard about Ithaca. They've been to that area and seen people that carry that extreme ideology firsthand. And you see it in the primary. You see the primary results where folks are in the primary, in my opinion, are trying to get as far left as possible. Where Bernie Sanders essentially at times doesn't seem to be left enough. A self-proclaimed socialist.
Right.
And you got people of that extreme ethical liberal ideology that say he's not left enough. And you see now this new candidate coming out of the Joe Crowley seat in New York City, who essentially is not just a socialist. I would, in my humble opinion, say is embracing communism. I saw the banner she was walking under where it says, abolish ICE, abolish profit. That's abolishing capitalism in its entirety. That to me is an extreme ideology that's represented by the extreme ethical liberal brand that people get. People, in my humble opinion, when you say that, they understand what I'm talking about. They know it's not personal. They know it's not people. It's a ideology that we got to fight against. That's way too extreme, not only for our area but for the country as a whole.
Now, it seems that a lot of this it sometimes comes back to the party ties, the actual party ties of having a candidate pull another candidate further to the left and or the right. Cynthia Nixon, Governor Cuomo, that sort of dynamic. How much of the party plays a role in this problem? And is it just getting to a point now where people are identifying less with a particular party and more just with the people and with issues independently?
Well, it's not necessarily a party issue, I think, to your question. I think it's individuals within the party tend to become poster children of the extreme movements, if you would. I mean, we've had it on the right. You've seen the Ron Paul or type of kind of poster child to the hard right, pushing the party very extreme. In my opinion, you see, like you said, Cynthia Nixon, this new candidate coming up in New York City. It tends to be driven, I think, by folks that are frustrated, folks that don't believe that the party is listening to them anymore. The Republican Party, we went, it's often said, we went through the Tea Party movement of 2010 to the hard right, if you would. They're now going through their herbal Tea Party, is what I've heard it described as, on their left.
Right.
And, it happens, I guess, when people get frustrated with their leaders, and rightfully so. That's why I ran in the first time. I just said, you know what, I don't like where the Obama administration wants to lead this country. I think it's way too left, it's way too extreme. I don't believe that represents the best of America and what I want my children and grandchildren to experience as they get older. And so you saw us get engaged into it. Now what I'm trying to do in our party is to be a voice of not moderation, but respect and reasonableness. Where getting 80% of an issue solved is not a defeat. That is a victory. That's the old Ronald Reagan adage that I subscribe to. We should celebrate that as a success. And then continue to push for the other 20%, go through that process, but don't say that's a defeat. And it seems like today, most politicians that are running say it has to be 100% my way or the highway, and that leads to gridlock, and that has taken over our governments, and that just can't happen anymore. That's why I'm so proud of the work we're trying to do, bringing people together and get to that 80% victory.
So we don't know yet who your challenger is actually going to be this fall. But what are you taking into this race now, knowing that you have 4 or 5-ish months to prepare for one of two people? Are there specific issues that you're looking at that you want to make clear, to point out where the differences are, or are you going to just sort of stick to the point of appealing to the broad district rather than, as the Democrats seem to have, appealed to either Geneva, Ithaca, or some of the more niche locations?
Yeah. No, I try to represent the entire district. That's why we do the town halls. That's why we show up in each one of the 11 counties. We do the frontline visits all the time because I want input from real people. I think that's the way you should represent a district. We represent 717,000 people. We're not going to agree. I got 11 older brothers and sisters. We never agreed 100%. I don't agree with my spouse 100% of the time. I don't agree 100% of the time with my priest. It's just the nature of the beast. But we have an obligation to listen to those 717,000. That's why we engage in being accessible and doing the miles on the road and getting out there and listening to folks. And I think at the end of the day, what this race will boil down to is two competing philosophies. Our philosophy based on individuals, based on local control, not big government price control types of solutions. And you see that philosophy dovetail into the issues. My opponents, each and every one of them, it can be the 5 that ran in the Democratic primary. As much of the mainstream media of the district said, there's really nothing different about any of them. They're all cut from the same cloth. So when you see big government policies like healthcare, where they want to have government-run healthcare, that's their solution to the healthcare crisis, is more government, more control, complete government running of healthcare. I'm about empowering patients and doctors and bringing market pressure into the healthcare arena and the health insurance marketplace. Two different things. Bring market pressure into there to drive costs down and make insurance affordable, as well as overall healthcare costs. And I think that's going to be a fundamental difference in this race. I think you're also going to see kind of a philosophy where folks want the government on their side to control local determinations, to have, when it comes to regulations, bigger and stronger regulations. I am about a cost-benefit, reasonable approach to regulations. And then we're going to see the difference on tax reform. Their adage is they want to increase taxes. They think people should pay more taxes. I think people pay too many taxes and pay too much in taxes. And we're going to continue to put that vision forward. Let people control their money rather than send it to Washington, D.C. with increased taxes and then let the government bureaucracy figure out what's best for the people back home. Let them people have their money and let them spend it where they want to and make the investments in our backyard. So those are three of the top issues I think we're going to see as we go into the election campaign. But who knows? It's really up to the people. And I have an open book, open door policy. We will tell people where we stand on the issues. If we don't know where we stand on an issue because it's a new issue coming down the pipeline, we'll tell you we don't know, but we're going to get the information and make an informed position and then come up with that position when we have all the information and best that we can do to move forward.
So I'm curious now. I want to sort of get back to this issue of big, broad national issues versus the ones that have a greater local impact, like the incinerator. We hear it a lot when we'll publish a story about a big national topic that has some local tie. Voters seem to have don't really want to deal with it, don't want to hear about it. They want to hear about the local issues. So as a representative who has to pay attention and be involved with these national issues, how do you also keep grounded in the local issues as well?
I think the way you do that is the way we do it. You show up. You show up at the town halls. You stand in front of hundreds of people that may disagree with you and try to listen to them. And that's one of the things I've experienced firsthand. I've stood there and you get through the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, Josh, and it's amazing then when the dust starts to settle how you can actually have somewhat of a conversation about issues that are impacting people. And they could be national issues, but they also can be local issues. I'll remember a town hall in Tompkins County where we got through a lot of the screaming and yelling, and the last part of the conversation was about a local flood control issue that a community was having that we could help with in regards to some of the federal dollars that go into flood control matters. So, that's what I strive for. You got to listen to folks. Now, when it comes to, for example, the incinerator, I can take a position on it, and I am opposed to it, but this is consistent with our philosophy of this is a local state determination. Mm-hmm. I think the governments that are closest to the people govern better and best for people. So at least we have the opportunity here in our region to make our position known to our state officials and to the state review process, and we are. And I think at the end of the day, the state's going to be receptive to that. What I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is the governor and other state officials saying, they're hearing our message. We just got to make sure they hear it all the way to the finish line, because you never know what's going to happen, especially when we're facing that downstate influence in New York City. That is something I think upstate is united on, mm-hmm. where we know downstate versus upstate, two different worlds in New York State, and we always tend to sometimes take it on the short end of the stick. But when we organize and stay together, we can push back on that downstate influence.
So my last question for you, where will people be seeing you over the next couple months? Public events, anything like that, especially in the campaign trail, going to be getting out there? Yeah,
we are, as we continue stopping here, using media sources, but just showing up and doing things that aren't even, on front page of the paper. Because, you really have, in my opinion, the best information comes from the people that are living and breathing in our neighborhoods, in our place that we call home, getting that information. So, I just stopped at that hardware store unannounced just to pick up some things, but at the same time, more to talk to people. You'll see me at diners. You'll see me in organized events. You'll see me at parades. You'll see me at the local Wegmans. This is home. I spend my time here because I love it, and I want it to be in a position to thrive for generations to come. And that's what we're going to continue to do, is just listen to people, represent people as best we can, and ultimately, it's up to the people come November.
All right, well, I really appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll be talking again. Long 4 months for you ahead. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Really do appreciate it.
That's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Congressman Reed, our listeners, and of course FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. You can catch Inside the FLX on Saturdays during the 10 o'clock hour on WDWN 89.1 FM or 97.7 FM in Fulton. The program also airs on Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum, channel 1304, and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay informed, Finger Lakes.
There we go.